This is Corey and Diana Sullivan with their children, 4-year-old Arabella and their 7-month-old twins Amelia and Christian. The Georgia state government stole Corey and Diana's children because Amelia has multiple diagnosed medical conditions and the government doesn't want to acknowledge it. Corey was also arrested and faces decades in prison for a crime that never happened. The Sullivan family has been living a nightmare ever since. We're going to end that nightmare for them. And at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you how you can help. But first, I'm going to give you the backstory here. Corey and Diana met in middle school, married at 21, and started their family. Their children were all born by in vitro fertilization. Corey and Diana struggled with infertility issues for 14 years. They spent most of their life savings on IVF procedures to get pregnant with Arabella. When Arabella was 2 years old, the Sullivans wanted nothing more than to give their daughter a brother or sister. Corey and Diana once again used IVF, and they got the greatest news ever. It worked, and Diana was pregnant with twins. Arabella would have a little brother and sister. But there were some complications. Amelia and Christian had separate placentas, and during pregnancy, Diana experienced severe complications with Amelia. Christian was thriving and developing normally, but Amelia was not. She had high protein levels and was not gaining weight like Christian was. During the 3rd trimester, Diana had higher than average protein levels, and doctors feared that Amelia was not getting enough oxygen and nutrients due to restricted blood flow to the placenta. Doctors told Diana that if she delivered naturally, it would likely crush every bone in Amelia's tiny body. So the twins were delivered by emergency C-section. At the time of her birth, Amelia weighed just 3 pounds, and she spent 42 days in the NICU. During her gestation and after her birth, Amelia was diagnosed with intrauterine growth restriction, anemia, low platelets, limited bone mineral deposition, delayed bone development, hyperchloremic acidosis, generalized demineralization of the spine, and softness of the bones. But despite all of that, this sweet little girl survived pregnancy and is still going as strong as she can. And we now know why Amelia had so many issues. Recently, Diana was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS. It's a genetic disorder that explains all of the complications that she experienced with Amelia. Now, 7 weeks after Amelia was discharged from the NICU, she was still very underweight and her right leg began to swell. If she did eat, she would immediately throw up. Unable to keep her formula and life-sustaining vitamins down, Corey and Diana rushed Amelia to Southeast Georgia Health System. Doctors there saw that her femur was fractured, and they also noticed that she had several rib fractures in various stages of healing. These fractures were later determined by an independent doctor to have very likely occurred in utero and are very possibly the result of Amelia having EDS herself. Amelia was referred to Wolfson's Children's Hospital in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, if you follow me and the other stories of government abuse that we've uncovered, this will start to sound very familiar and very infuriating. At Wolfson's, Dr. Barbara Knox, a child abuse physician, ignored Amelia's medical history and decided that she had been abused. She literally just ignored everything and said, yeah, no, she's obviously being abused. Because the Sullivans are Georgia residents, the Georgia Department of Family and Children's Services, or DFCS, was notified, and local law enforcement requested the assistance of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or GBI. In December of 2023, and again, despite conclusive, independent medical opinions and findings to the contrary, Corey was arrested by GBI Special Agent Thomas Kimmelblatt and charged with first-degree cruelty to children and aggravated battery against Amelia. That agent, without conducting any real investigation, relied solely on the opinion of Dr. Knox when he applied for and received the arrest warrants. Had he actually investigated, he would have immediately discovered Amelia's long medical history explaining her injuries. And had Dr. Knox actually done her job, DFCS and GBI would have never been contacted in the first place. It has now been 3 months since all of this happened, and Corey has yet to be indicted by a grand jury, for a very obvious reason. The state knows that all of the evidence points to Corey's innocence and to the government's guilt. If these circumstances sound familiar, they should. The Sullivan case is eerily similar to that of the Hernandez and Timms families. Their children also have diagnosed medical conditions and have had their children stolen by defects because a child abuse physician just decided to call it abuse. They also are facing criminal charges for abuse that did not happen, as well as the possibility that they'll never see their children again. Now let's talk about Dr. Knox for a moment. Dr. Barbara Knox is the former head of the Child Protection Program in Madison, Wisconsin, as well as Alaska Cares, a state-supported clinic operated by Providence Alaska Medical Center. Why is she formerly with them? Because she has a pattern of falsely accusing parents of child abuse and has pressured colleagues to find abuse in children where none existed. Every single staff member at Alaska Cares who worked for or with Dr. Knox resigned because of her unprofessional conduct. Alaska Cares investigated Dr. Knox and determined that her diagnoses failed to meet their standard of care. She resigned from both positions soon after. Despite this documented history of abuse of her position, Dr. Knox was hired by Wolfson's and is trusted by the Georgia state government to determine whether or not children are being abused. I'm going to say that again. The Georgia state government has entrusted the role of finding out whether or not children are being abused with a woman who has a long history of fraudulently claiming that children have been abused and pressuring her colleagues to back up her fraudulent claims. If you take your child to Wolfson's with any medical issue, this woman will be the one deciding if you abuse them or not. And earlier this month at the Sullivans family court hearing, things got much worse. Their judge has ordered non-reunification. This means that the Sullivan children may be permanently taken from Corey and Diana and placed for adoption. Corey and Diana would have to pay $2,000 a month in child support and may never see their children ever again. Corey's criminal charges are still pending because, again, the state knows that all evidence points to their guilt and not Corey's. This family and all the other families whose nightmares we've uncovered in Georgia have suffered enough at the hands of an out-of-control governmental system. Corey and Diana's children need to be in their home with their parents, and Corey needs to be free from the threat of felony prosecution. We're going to get this family reunited and put this nightmare behind them. Here's how you can help. First, go to youarethepower.net/Sullivan. We've got a list of officials to contact and a template of wording that you can use when you email or call them. Go to that link and tell those officials to respect this family and stop tearing them apart. And look, before you contact them, just remember, I know you're angry, so am I. But let's not give these officials the opportunity to play the victim. Oh no, why is everyone being so mean to me? I'm just doing my job. You know how they are. They'd love nothing more than to make it about themselves. But it's not about them. And it's not about what we think of them. It is about Corey, Diana, Arabella, Amelia, and Christian Sullivan. It is about reuniting them and getting these charges dropped and ending this nightmare for good. So please, be respectful when you contact these officials. Please stick to the facts and ask them to do the right thing. We've even got a wording template that you can use to get your point across. We all know that government officials care about what's politically expedient. Let's make it politically expedient for them to drop these charges and reunite this family. Then, once you've done that, come back here and share this video far and wide and tag your family and your loved ones in the comments, tag your favorite influencers and talking heads and celebrities, tag everyone else you can think of. We want everyone to know about this so that we can get as many people as possible to help us in reuniting the Sullivan family. With your help, we will reunite this family like we've helped so many others. Now let's do it. Love y'all.